Mega Man was Capcom's first dedicated console game, released in 1987 on the Nintendo Entertainment Console. For myself and anyone else watching this that played this game when it was new, you're gonna feel really old when I say that that was more than 30 years ago. Yikes. To put the technology into scope here, the NES system ran a CPU at 1.79 megahertz. That's in megahertz, which is 1,000 times slower than gigahertz, which today's CPUs are measured with. It also had 2 kilobytes of system RAM, though NES cartridges could provide their own RAM to use as well. However, Mega Man was shipped on first generation NES cartridge hardware with only 32 kilobytes of memory to store and run the game on. Still, even with those teeny tiny specs, I believe the game still holds up well, and I still have a blast playing it today. The port I'm playing here is from the Mega Man Legacy Collection, which comes with the first 6 entries in the series. The emulation is nearly perfect, and it comes with nice little extras like filters that add scan lines for a full retro experience, save states so you don't lose your progress if you have to leave, and a turbo boost option which gets rid of much of the slowdown that appeared on the original system when there were a lot of things going on the screen at the same time, and which was also correctly emulated in this version. I will be leaving the slowdown in as to show off the game in its more natural original state. But if you're interested in playing this game for yourself, the whole package is only $15 on Steam, which is a great deal. It's a lot of fun. You get a lot of classic games for that price, and I can't recommend it enough. Okay, so let's get started, shall we? So we're greeted with the level select screen where you get to choose which robot master to take on. This was actually pretty revolutionary at the time, as most other games provided very scripted and ordered experiences throughout the game. This gave the player the freedom to choose their own path, which many other games then copied in the form of overworlds like in the Zelda series, or map screens like in Super Mario Bros. 3 and on. The choices you make here actually make a world of difference in your overall experience with the game. When you defeat a robot master, you're rewarded with his signature ability. And each robot master has a specific ability he is weak to, making him much easier to defeat if you have it available. I like to start with Bomb Man because the platforming on this stage is a little more forgiving, and Bomb Man himself is fairly manageable with the Mega Buster, or the basic weapon you start with. Getting the bomb ability early also puts you on a great trajectory for the rest of the game. These little guys are called fleas, and while they aren't that dangerous, they are very annoying if you let them live to swarm around you. So we'll take them out as soon as we can. These scatter bombs can be imposing at first, but if you know where to stand, they become pretty trivial. So right away, you may notice a big jump in music quality from most other games of the time. Super Mario Bros. In particular featured a theme with 1 or 2 layers of music and an extremely simple melodic tune for each level. Many people were shocked to hear such a full, driving, and quality sound come from a game on the same system. In fact, many people contend that the Mega Man series has some of the best and most iconic music in the history of video games, and I might agree with them. Though, in my opinion, I don't think the series' music really hits its stride until Mega Man 2. The music in this game is still pretty great. Now, this guy is called Sniper Joe, and he is just a pain in the ass. Easily the most annoying part of starting the game on this level, because there's nothing you can do to get past him until he decides to jump or shoot at you. And whether or not he does either one of those things is completely random. He also won't let you jump past him, as we'll see later, so you're forced to just kind of deal with his bullshit while chipping away at him with your Mega Buster. Those bullet guys are called killer bullets, and you'll see me avoid them instead of shooting them whenever I can. You can kill them with one shot, but they do explode, and the explosion lingers, creating a bigger, more dangerous hazard anyway. This part is annoying too. These guys are called flying shells, and while they're not too hard to deal with on their own, they always seem to appear in the most precise platforming sections, so I've learned to dread them. They are invulnerable until they open up to fire their shots, and when they do, they fire in all 8 directions. And here is our second encounter with a Sniper Joe. This time, as we try to run past him, you can see that he is matching our pace and jumping after us. This effectively makes it impossible, if he's on our same level, to avoid him. So we were actually forced to deal with him and kill him earlier in the level. Okay, so you might see me pause the game now and then when I take a hit. That's because pausing in this game causes all kinds of fun things to happen, all in your favor. For example, if you pause the game just after getting hit, your hit animation will be cancelled, allowing you to take control sooner and enjoy longer invulnerability. It can also save you from being knocked off a ledge to your death. It actually makes getting hit a valid tactic in some parts. So here's our first boss fight with Bomb Man. He's pretty straightforward, though it can get hairy if he gets you cornered. Even if he does, however, you can still jump at just the right time to avoid the circular blast radius of his hyper bombs. And that's it. First Robot Master defeated. And now we can chuck hyper bombs. Alright, next up is Gutsman, who happens to be weak to the hyper bomb blasts. I could have started at this level and been fine for the rest of the game, but as you'll see soon, the platforming is considerably more difficult, and Gutsman himself is harder to beat using just the Mega Buster. Having access to bombs really makes this level easier to handle. These guys are called bladers, and just because of the angle they attack you at, it's sometimes easier to avoid them than to try to kill them. Another shield character, though these guys aren't as bad as the last. They are called Picket Man, or Picket Men in this case. They are not randomly controlled, they just sit there and chuck picks at you. You can inch forward slowly, avoiding his picks, and if you time it just right, you won't get hit. As you can see, I'm super good at doing that. This game likes to hide good stuff on blind platforms during fast falls, so it pays to replay the levels and learn where everything is. The platform for the 1-up here requires frame-perfect timing on when you hold left. I get it maybe 1 out of 10 tries, but this was not one of those times. Hopefully I won't need it anyway. This guy is called Big Eye, not Big Guy, and I hate him. He sort of acts like a final guardian for many of the Robot Masters. He randomly switches between short and high jumps, and you can only get under him on a high jump. You don't have much time to react, so it becomes like a 50-50 guess, and if you guess wrong, he takes a third of your life, which right before a boss fight can be devastating. And I just gotta say, the more I play this game, the more I start to realize I think my favorite part about it is just Mega Man's jump animation. Look at that. It's so like out of control and yet athletic at the same time, and his mouth is open like he's yelling like a battle cry. I could just watch Mega Man jump all day, and I don't think there's anything weird about that. So here is Gutsman himself. He's a pretty unique boss in the game. He jumps around and causes a shockwave when he lands, which will put Mega Man in a hit stun animation. He can also throw out giant rocks at you, which are very hard to avoid, even if you're not stunned. Thankfully, he's weak to bombs, so you can take him out in 3 blasts. However, this fight can still be tricky if he decides to jump straight at you every time, like he does here. But we get lucky, and he gets hit by the very edge of the blast. And, with Gutsman's ability, the Super Arm, we can now pick up and throw certain pieces of the environment, which is not only a great weapon, but it also provides utility that is absolutely necessary for completing the game, which we will see in another 2 levels or so. Now, Cutman is weak to the super arm ability, so we'll pick him next. Doing my best to avoid the bladers, and doing a terrible job at it. And these little turret guns are called beaks. Like with a few other enemies, it's only vulnerable once its shell opens up to attack. Not a big threat normally, but in large groups, they can cause a difficult bullet hell situation. Once you've been through the levels a few hundred times though, you can find the soft spots. Now these fun little guys are called octopus batteries. That would be an awesome name for a band, but in this case, I don't think it makes much sense. I mean, they have 4 legs, not 8, and maybe they have batteries, but they are not batteries. Anyway, they take 5 shots to defeat, but follow a very strict movement pattern, and are easy to avoid most of the time if you're patient. Oh, here's a fun little trick. If there is a ladder that leads off the bottom of the screen, and you can get to the top of the screen right above where that ladder is, you can climb that ladder as if you were under the bottom of the screen. In this case, it lets us skip a whole screen. I'll show you what I mean here. These spinning turrets are called screw bombers, and they're quite common. You'll see them all over the place in this game, and they try to present bullet hell scenarios. And here's the boss fight with Cutman. It should go quickly if everything happens how it should, as he only takes 2 hits when you throw these blocks at him using the Gutsman ability or the power arm. However, Cutman goes pretty nuts when you get in close and starts jumping around like a crazy person. And unlike most other things in the game, these blocks don't come back when you die or re-enter the area, so you have to be careful with the only 2 cracks you get at it. Now in this fight, I actually did get the block dupe bug to work. And the block dupe bug is if you can pick up the next block on the very same frame as when the original block leaves the screen, the block in front of you will not disappear when you pick it up. It's really hard to do, but it really comes in handy in certain situations. The most interesting part of this Cutman fight, in my opinion, is that it showcases the original rock, paper, scissors overall design of the game. In this case, rock does beat scissors, and this was the first strength-weakness relationship between the robot masters that the rest of the game was fleshed out around. Elecman is vulnerable to the rolling cutter, or Cutman's ability, so we'll go there next. And now we'll see that these new weapons aren't only useful against bosses. These little Roomba guys are called spines because why not? They can be stopped, but not killed by the Mega Buster, but the rolling cutter makes quick work of them. This is one of my favorite levels in the game because it features some fun timing-based platforming with the electric beams here. Ugh, these guys. They only take one shot to kill, but if you wait a split second too long, they'll start zapping you from all angles and really ruin your day, especially on screens like this where if you fall, you have to redo multiple screens. Now it's time for the famous disappearing blocks. These will reappear later, but before you learn the timing and placement of these blocks, you're likely to get very frustrated. Especially here, because if you fall, you'll have to make your way back up several levels just to try again. Pretty unforgiving stuff. That health keg is a trap. It's easy enough to get to, but getting back out requires pixel-perfect spacing not to bash your head off the overhang and plummet to an instant death. Even if I can use it, I tend to skip it anyway. More zappy guys here, or watchers as they are officially called, and you can see just how nasty they can be once you let them go on the offensive. This was not a big deal this time since I had a safety net at the bottom of the screen. Now here is the magnet ray, which is absolutely necessary for certain parts in later levels, and makes things much easier in other parts. Making sure you have the power arm ability before taking on this level is the central component in constructing a boss order for this game. And now we'll get to see exactly what this magnet ray can do for us. It provides a makeshift temporary platform wherever you may decide to place it, and it actually can become quite a large platform if you hold the attack button down. Here, we only need a small one. And now we're on the home stretch to Elecman himself. He dies in only 3 shots from a rolling cutter, but his own weapon is so powerful, he only needs 3 shots to outright kill Mega Man at full health. So entering this fight with less than full health can be a precarious situation. Also, you start this fight in the middle of the arena right next to the boss himself, so you'll want to have your rolling cutter ready for action early. So now we have the Thunder Beam, which is one of, if not the, most powerful weapon in the game. We'll use it to take on Tom Cruise's flyboy rival, Iceman. Of course, every NES game from the 90s worth its salt needs a slidey ice level, and this is Mega Man's. These goofy bastards are called Crazy Raisies. The trick is to shoot them in the head as soon as possible. If you let them get too close, or you shoot their bodies, the upper parts will split off and fly around, living up to their names. This part. I'd use the magnet ray to just skip over this whole area, but we'll need it later in the level. So we just have to dive right into the shit here. Jumping platform to platform is the best way to do this, but it takes pixel-perfect spacing to avoid falling in between with a nutty spine. The jump is spaced at the very end of Mega Man's jump range, and the slowdown really doesn't help. Also, you have to deal with these flying penguins called Pangs. That's really creative, I know. They can give you some really tricky angles to deal with. Generally, getting through this part, only getting hit once or twice is considered a success in my opinion. And here we can see the power of the Thunder Beam. The Octopus batteries here take 5 shots each to destroy with the Mega Buster, but only 1 with the Thunder Beam. It also shoots above and below you and fans out in a wide angle the farther it goes. Here is another disappearing blocks screen. This one is a bit more complicated, followed by another which is even more complicated. And this is the part I've been saving the magnet ray for. These platform dudes, or footholders, the localization in this game, move completely randomly. So even if you play this part perfectly, you still might get stuck here indefinitely, depending on how much the RNG wants to cooperate. So I just skip it. Now this 1-up is extremely difficult to get. You can't just hold left, you need to time your move perfectly to miss the top corner and land on the bottom corner. I've only been able to manage it a handful of times personally. Hopefully we won't need it anyway. We'll now take this opportunity to refill some of our weapons, and we're on the home stretch to the boss. Now, Iceman is really weak to the Thunder Beam, so this becomes a pretty easy fight as long as you can avoid a prolonged battle where you need to keep avoiding his Ice Slasher. Those spikes are possible to avoid, and this can be a fun challenge with the Mega Buster, but I don't want to make you watch me die too many times, and also want to keep this video short, so we won't play with our food this time around. So now that we have the Ice Slasher, we can take on Fireman. This level is perhaps the most daunting for new players, but once you know it and have some practice under your belt, it becomes one of the funnest. There is a bit of randomness with these little fire guys, or tackle fires as they're officially known, but if you're about to be hit, just be ready with that pause button so you don't end up in the hot sauce below. You can actually freeze these flame pillars with the Ice Slasher and use them as platforms, but that is unnecessary when you have the almighty Magnet Ray. And we'll once again avoid the killer bullets because we do not want to deal with their explosions. But we can use the Thunder Beam here to help clear out the spines and the killer bullets that are far enough away to be harmless. This last part can be tricky, and you can use the Ice Slasher to freeze the flame pillars if you're not confident with the timing, but once you do have the timing down, they're pretty easy to avoid anyway. Now, Fireman is perhaps the hardest robot master in the entire game, just because his attacks are pretty much unavoidable and he is remarkably resilient, even against his weakness. So, I'll be using a trick that some call pause buffering to defeat him. Basically, when you use the pause button, everything stops except for hit stun and invulnerability ghost frames. The player can use this toward their advantage with persistent projectiles getting multiple hits from a single shot. Sounds confusing, but I'll illustrate it here. And that's that. Easy peasy. The last remaining and most difficult Robot Master dispatched. And now we have access to his Firestorm ability. So now we have access to Wily's castle. If Dr. Wily looks familiar, that's because his character was based on Albert Einstein. In fact, Dr. Wily's canon first name is Albert. It's a bit odd to think of Einstein as a supervillain, since in the States and most of the Western world we see him as a lovable, goofy genius. But from Japan's perspective, he helped develop the atom bomb, which caused mass destruction in Japan during World War II. So you can see how they might have a different opinion of the guy. Now that we have the Ice Slasher, we have a more reliable way of getting past these big eyes. Basically, you just need to freeze them in place on one of their high jumps, and you can just cruise right underneath them. This time, I'm going to go ahead and use the Ice Slasher to freeze these flame pillars. It is possible to avoid them, but extremely difficult. Speedrunners can just fly through this part, but I am not that good. Here's another health keg that requires pixel-perfect spacing on the jump to get to. However, this one is pretty safe to try, so I go for it every time. And I got it! So glad I got to capture that. Now, it's tempting to shoot these killer bullets while they're far away to avoid having to deal with them, but that just causes them to spawn in faster, making it even more difficult. So the best bet here is to just try to avoid them the best you can, and be ready with that pause button to avoid being shoved into the spikes. And I died. These footholders can be real bastards. Now, I hope I have enough magnet ray to get me through that again. That got messy. But when you're dealing with randomly moving enemies, it can't always be pretty. So this is a fun trick. The weapon charges at the end of that section respawn whenever you re-enter that area. So we're going to use that to fully charge our magnet ray for this next part. And here comes the infamous Yellow Devil. Now, even if you're well practiced and know the pattern for this enemy, he is still difficult, since his pizzas move really quickly, and he has a ton of HP, not to mention the fact that he gives you such a small area to work with. So, we're just going to use the Thunder Beam with the pause trick this time to take him out quickly. And that is level 1 of Wily's Castle complete. No rewards here, but we do move on, closer to our final confrontation with Wily himself. So this level presents some interesting platforming challenges, mixed with some refights with some of the robot masters that we've already defeated. In this fight with Cutman, there are no blocks to use the power arm with, so we'll just have to take him on with the Mega Buster. He's manageable though once you know his pattern and find his jump rhythm. Now we'll face Electman again, but this time with less health, so we'll have to be very careful. Took a shot, but we made it through. For this next stretch, the utility of the Thunder Beam really presents itself. We can use it to basically clear our path through the rest of the level. For the next boss fight, Wily has a surprise for us. He decides to clone the Blue Bomber himself to try to stop our hero. Well, luckily for us, the clone doesn't know how to use the pause trick. And level 2 of Wily's Castle is complete. On to the penultimate level. Getting close. We'll be making heavy use of the Thunder Beam to clear out the trash on our way to the first boss.
Ah, the water tunnel. This part's fun as it pushes you along faster than you've gone throughout the game. We'll destroy the first 6 pangs here, and then avoid the next 10 killer bullets. As with the increased speed here, their explosions will catch you if you shoot them. And don't forget about this last guy, he is tricky. And now for another really tough boss fight. This guy is invulnerable to everything except the Mega Buster and the Power Arm. But there are 7 bots to destroy here and only 4 blocks to throw at them. So we'll take out the first 3 with the Buster, using the blocks to avoid them the best we can, and save the final 4 bots for the blocks. This is a tough fight even with full health, so buckle your safety belts here. As mentioned earlier, there is a duping glitch with the Power Arm that you can exploit, but it's really difficult. If you pick up a block on the exact same frame as the last thrown block disappears, the second block will not vanish when you pick it up. Some people can get it to work every time, but I'm not that good. However, it does save our bacon this time. Okay, last level. Mostly just some familiar hazards here until we get to the end. And we'll use this to fill our Thunder Beam, since we'll need it for the next stretch to clear out the screw bombers all over the place. And then yet another job perfect for the Magnet Ray. Now we'll face all the remaining robot masters that we haven't previously refought, all in a row. So we'll be making heavy use of both the master's weaknesses and the pause buffer trick to get through this in good enough shape to face Dr. Wily himself. Bomb Man is the first master we faced, and so we didn't have the Firestorm then. But we do now, and the poor guy doesn't stand a chance. Gutsman can really be a pain here, since the timing is still really strict for avoiding his tremors and throws, and we still want to get out of here with as much health as possible for the final fight. You can use the pause trick here, but I guess I forgot. And on to the final battle. Looks like we're actually in decent shape health-wise here. But we'll go ahead and fill up the Thunder Beam just in case, and on we go. Wily's first form is weak to Firestorm, but his attacks are hard to avoid, so we'll use the pause trick here too. The second form presents a smaller target, so we'll use the Thunder Beam to make the shot a bit more forgiving. And there it is. Look at him grovel, that cowardly bastard. Some nice ending music here. So the first thing you might notice about the credits is that everyone on the staff is using nicknames. In fact, they were required to do so by Capcom. This practice was pretty much ubiquitous in Japan back in the day because studios were really afraid of their engineers being poached by other studios. Of course, that probably breaks all kinds of labor laws these days, but that was the world back then. The next thing you may notice is that Mega Man, or Rock, which is his name when he's not donning the armor, looks very familiar. He looks very much like Astro Boy in this form, and that may not be coincidental. Rumor has it that Capcom had a license to make an Astro Boy game, but lost it right before making this game. But they still wanted to make a similar game, so they made their own version of the character, and this is what they ended up with. Now Keiji Inafune, fresh out of college at this time, who did much of the artwork and character design, has denied this, saying that any similarities are purely coincidental. But that might just be him jealously protecting his creations, because the similarities are pretty undeniable. Only he knows the truth, however, and everything else is just speculation. Also, since the game does little to nothing to set up and introduce the story itself, unless you've read the manual that originally came with the game, you'd have no clue who these other two people are. The lab Santa you see on the left there is Dr. Light. His name was incorrectly localized to Dr. Wright in the game manual, but that was corrected in later games. He is Rock/Mega Man's creator, and the creator of all the robot masters we've encountered in our journey. Their original purpose was to help civilization advance and make the world a better place, before Dr. Wily hijacked them. Rock was Dr. Light's first humanoid creation, and the girl in the middle was his second, and he named her Roll. So, Mega Man and his sister are known collectively as Rock and Roll, because apparently Dr. Light is just a big old super genius hippie, with a Santa beard. How can you not love this guy? Anyway, that does it for this little retro playthrough / retrospective of one of my favorite games ever. I know it's a bit of a departure from my normal content, but I felt like I needed a change of pace for a bit, and this game never fails to put me in a good mood. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have, because I'll probably do more of these in the future. But don't worry, we will return to regularly scheduled programming very soon. Until then, as always, take care, and thanks for watching.